Imagine boarding a luxury cruise ship. Blue skies, calm seas, parties, champagne and music. Now imagine that 2 days later, the passengers begin to die, one by one, in horrible ways, leaving only a message written in blood. She's going to kill us all. This is not fiction. This happened on the Vista del Mar cruise ship, and the only witness who could tell what happened almost didn't come back alive. The helicopter landed on the helipad of the Vista del Mar cruise ship, docked in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. Something terrifying had happened, and it required a more in-depth analysis by someone who was used to dealing with unusual situations. Frances Morales, a sensitive medium well known for her work with the afterlife, got off the aircraft. She took a deep breath and fixed her hair, which had already turned white with age, which was flying in the strong wind caused by the propellers. She was welcomed by the ship's captain, Mr. Forrester, who helped her with her personal belongings and led her to her cabin. Once in the corridor, shivers ran down Frances's spine, making it clear that the environment was neither conducive nor generous. Not even luxury could dispel the darkness that hung over the ship's gangway, charged with dense and heavy energy. After placing the lady's belongings on the floor inside the cabin, he was asked, "Captain Forrester, could you tell me in detail what happened here?" "I don't know if I can tell you in detail what happened, Mrs. Francis. I've never seen anything like it. I remember hearing stories about ghosts and things like that. But what happened here is far beyond my comprehension." The man spoke with his gaze lost in some point in the recent past. "Tell me how to get it. I know that situations like this are traumatic, but I need details." Even before the captain had started his story, disconnected images began to form before Frances's eyes, and they all belonged to a woman. Her body trembled, and the uncontrollable movements of her nervous hands showed what awaited her. "Are you okay, Mrs. Francis?" "Yes." "Can you tell me how it all started?" "Well, it all started with a passenger who, soon after we left the port, presented a kind of schizophrenia. He looked around the deck, cornered, and screamed insanely, 'She's going to kill everyone.' I asked the nurses to take him to the infirmary and give him some sedative because, in a way, some kind of stress is normal when boarding a ship for the first time. This was done, but that same night, the man threw himself into the middle of the sea, and no matter how hard we tried, he seemed determined not to return to the ship. One of the most experienced sailors, who had worked with me on this cruise for years, jumped in to rescue him, and I swear I don't know what happened, but it seems that both of them were pulled under the ship. Judging by the blood that painted the waters red, I'm sure that the ship's propeller tore them both apart. And then, Captain Forrester, 2 more days into the trip, 2 more passengers disappeared. We only found out because breakfast was brought to the room, followed by lunch and dinner, and on neither occasion was the chambermaid greeted or received an answer when she knocked on the door. I was called and personally asked for the cabin door to be broken down. The couple was not there, only their belongings, and on the bathroom mirror something written in lipstick, "She's going to kill us all." The ship was searched for them, but nothing was found, except on the security cameras, which filmed the exact moment when the two, hand in hand, approached the edge of the deck and threw themselves into the sea. Over the course of 5 days, 10 passengers committed suicide. One of them was even taken from his cabin last morning, hanging himself with his own shoelaces. There was something terrifying in his wide eyes, and on his bed was a note, "She's going to kill us all." But the strangest thing happened in the ballroom last night, which is why I called you. Frances shook her head. Flashes of what the captain was saying appeared to her, and in them she saw with certainty that they had not been suicides. "Tell me, what happened in the saloon? You wouldn't believe it if you hadn't seen it. That's the only reason I called you. Because not even the Coast Guard, with its police officers, could have accounted for what had happened here." The man took a deep breath and continued his story. The band played its medley. The passengers, with their glasses of champagne, danced, hugged, and sang to the sound of the cheerful music. But at a certain point, the cheerful song became sordid. It spoke of death instead of life. The notes sung were ominous, mournful, and the band, as if taken by an evil force, sang the cursed song louder and louder. Death calls. On the other side, a dark corridor awaits you. There is no light. It is over. The air in your lungs has run out, and now there are only larvae in them that devour every part of your body and soul. Through the holes left by your arrogance, I will enter. You gave me the freedom to do this when you took the light from me with your incomprehension. I burned in the vastest hell. Now you will burn with me, for you have given me the strength of an enraged demon. Everyone froze in front of the music and the grotesque scene. The band members began to shatter their musical instruments and kill each other on the stage. The passengers panicked and tried to leave the room, but the doors wouldn't open. And one by one, they began to shatter the glasses and cups and rip each other's throats. I've never seen so much hatred. They seemed to be overcome by the destructive force of anger. It didn't seem like it, Captain. They were overcome by a malignant and powerful force. Yes. Suddenly, a dark fog took over the room, and nothing could be seen anymore. Only screams and moans could be heard. And when everything went silent, in the midst of that dense fog, which I've never seen, not even when the strongest sea fogs form, something appeared. Something as black as darkness. Can you describe what it looked like? Yes. It was wearing a ragged purple-red dress. Her tangled hair covered part of her face. Her eyes were completely orange like the flames of a bonfire, and around her eyes everything was black. Her mouth had no lips and her teeth were exposed. They looked like sharp razors. She came towards me. Then I only remembered to hold the crucifix that I carry around my neck and ask the heavens for protection. I closed my eyes and waited for certain death because there was nowhere to run. And when I opened them, only the sea of blood and the dead people were before my eyes. Only those who were not in the hall still remain alive on this ship. Could you take me to the place where it all happened? Come with me. I can tell you right now that it looks like a war scene. Mrs. Francis followed him down the same corridor to a large hall. Standing in front of the cabin doors, she saw the souls of the dead, torn apart, begging for help. And in each of them, there were chains made of molten iron, still red hot, that tied them to the ship. The sight caused pain to the medium and left her completely exhausted. It was as if some of her energy was being sucked out with each step she took. The woman took a deep breath, closed her eyes and opened them again to observe each of those souls imprisoned by evil. As they entered the cabin, bodies sprawled in a river of blackened blood showed the terror that had been experienced there the night before. The iron smell of blood dazed the senses. The faces of the passengers had wide-eyed despair. The woman stopped and observed the dramatic scene. At the same moment, the music that was being sung at the moment of the carnage reached her ears, and moans of pain and despair merged with the ominous sound. Francis concentrated, and in a few seconds the evil being that had led everyone to death appeared before her. She surrounded her, letting her putrid odor enter the medium's nostrils, and then in a low roar she said in her ear, "Everyone here is going to die. Even you, Francis." Francis felt her body tremble, and more images appeared before her eyes. A beautiful woman in a red dress danced among the lights of a party hall. Soon, everything went dark, and in the midst of the darkness a deformed soul appeared, with eyes full of hatred and revenge, and advanced on Francis, who was thrown to the ground. The commander ran to her aid and helped her to get up. As soon as the man touched her, a whirlwind of confused feelings took hold of the woman, who struggled, seeming to fight against something strong enough to take the air from her lungs. The ship's captain, in desperation, tried to lift the woman who seemed to be on the verge of death, but it was useless. Whatever had taken possession of Francis was powerful. Little by little, the woman's movement ceased, and when Forrester had already accepted Mrs. Francis's death, the medium suddenly stood up, seeking air, with wide eyes. "We are dealing with something very, very bad, Captain." The man nodded and helped her. "Let's get out of here, Mrs. Francis. Walking back to the cabin, the woman decided to take a breath on the deck. Whatever she had seen during her unconscious state had deeply disturbed her. The captain made a move to accompany her, but Frances needed to be alone. That was how she fit together the pieces of the supernatural puzzle that had been presented to her since she was a young girl. She leaned against the protective railing that surrounded the entire immense ship and turned her eyes to the clear waters, which in seconds became dark and fetid. The golden railing turned the color of rust. The ship, beautiful and sumptuous, now seemed like a very old ship, deformed by the action of time and the sea air. Frances was no longer in the present. She was transported to a distant past that revealed many things to her. Among them, the youth of Captain Forrester, a handsome man, a young and attractive sailor at the beginning of his career, ambitious, promoted to the position of first mate by his captain. Wherever he went, following the orders of his commander, he attracted attention. His very black hair contrasted with his grayish-blue eyes. He wore a very well-groomed white uniform and had such a big ego that it showed through the pores of his clear, enigmatic face, full of secrets and desires that were increasingly uncontrollable. It had been 4 years since the young man, hired by the largest cruise ship in his country, had begun his duties. As soon as he left the Navy, his greatest wish was to be crossing oceans on a ship that would not take him to war, but rather to the pleasures that being a captain could provide him. That was his greatest desire. To be a captain surrounded by luxury, feminine pampering, and the status that all this pomp would bring him. Hard-working, he already had the respect of the captain and his preference when it came to teaching him the duties of a true captain. Among them, the art of seduction. He had already been promoted to the rank of first mate, and Forrester was following the path of his dreams. Frances watched everything as a spectator of the past and felt that the worst was yet to come. Right in front of her, the captain, already approaching his 70s, called First Mate Forrester and took him to the edge of the deck, where the eyes of the passengers could not reach them, and pointed in the direction of a beautiful woman, a ballerina who performed her art for the passengers during the luxurious cruises in the ballroom. She had very straight brown hair that reached her waist and danced in the wind. Her curvaceous body was another attraction of that trip, and her cleavage revealed her cleavage and a beautiful pendant, a ballerina. Her charming smile and seductive gaze attracted the attention of men and women, and her sensuality when dancing was admired by men and rejected by women who were bothered by the gazes of their companions, lost in the young woman's swaying, which really disturbed them. That woman was the newest object of desire of the captain of that ship, but he could not imagine that Forrester and the beautiful woman had already rolled around on the white sheets of his trusted man's cabin. The man remained silent, lowered his head, and said nothing about his feelings for the woman. The captain wanted her in his bed at any cost, and that had been an order, not a request. He couldn't expose himself, so Forrester would do all the work for him, taking her to his superior's cabin and sneaking out until the door closed in front of him, even if the beautiful woman didn't want it. Forrester, undecided about what to do, looked for Ingrid. That was the beautiful woman's name. Her eyes lit up as soon as she opened the door to her cabin. She was madly in love with the handsome man with blue eyes. He hugged her and kissed her warmly. He tangled his hands in her beautiful brown hair and threw her onto the fragrant bed. They made love, and then he told Ingrid about the commander's desire. The ballerina rebelled. The only thing she could feel for that man was disgust. She had already noticed his glances in her direction, but she had always made a point of making her complete disgust and rejection clear. Ingrid imagined that without the captain on board and with Forrester as his first mate, she proposed something to him. Something that would further fuel him desire. To be the captain. So they made the deal. Ingrid would go to the old man's cabin, and there, together with Forrester, she would end his life. The first mate would take over her position until the cruise ended, and thus, due to his competence and ability, he would command, without a shadow of a doubt, the next cruises on that luxurious ship, having the beautiful dancer in his cabin every night as his company. Forrester accepted without hesitation. A poison in the captain's drink was enough to make his two greatest wishes come true. That afternoon, Ingrid finished off the stock of apples in the ship's hold. She managed to get about 3 cups of seeds, and with that, a reasonable amount of cyanide, which would easily kill the old captain without leaving any traces. She crushed them, ground them up, and put them all in a bottle of wine. That night, she danced like never before in that ballroom. In her suggestive red dress, she drew applause from the spectators and a sparkle in the eyes of the old captain, who would have her in his bed a few hours later. At 3 in the morning, when the passengers were already asleep in their cabins, Forrester walked down the long corridor accompanied by Ingrid, who, still in her red dress and with lots of makeup, smiled discreetly at what was to come. A single knock caused the door to open. The hungry look of the old captain of that ship was noticeable, but a strange Machiavellian glint was even more evident. He stretched out his hand for Ingrid to enter and took the bottle of wine from her hand. He pulled Forrester into the cabin before the door closed. He knew about the plan, and he made it clear when he threatened Forrester, swearing to end his barely begun career. He ordered her to watch everything and, at the end, to help him in his sordid revenge if he wanted to continue being his second-in-command and possibly the captain of that ship in the future. The old man tore Ingrid's dress and raped her, growling like an animal under the gaze of Forrester, who, feeling threatened by the discovery, remained silent. The woman was brutally raped, several punches and kicks to the shouts of, "You whore! Did you think I wouldn't know about your plan? You whore from hell, I know very well what apple seeds do. Did you want to poison me? Well, now you're going to taste your own poison. Drink this poisoned wine, you devil's whore." The woman could no longer move. With her eyes, she begged Forrester for help while the old man poured the wine into her mouth. Forrester ignored her as if he had never known her or helped her in that plan. All the evidence pointed to her alone, because at no time had Forrester gone down to the ship's hold in search of apples or a bottle of wine. Surely, one of the crew members reported to the captain what Ingrid had done, ending up with the apples that were supposed to last until the end of the voyage. Not even her power of seduction was enough to shut the mouth of the man who let her go into the hold in search of apples. But not just 1 or 2. There were dozens and dozens cut in half and then thrown overboard. After putting on his white captain's uniform, he demanded that Forrester help him take her to the furnace that fed the ship's boilers. And, still alive, Ingrid was burned until only ashes remained. Forrester remained silent. He was never accused by his captain, but he knew deep down that the commander knew of his connection with Ingrid, and perhaps even of his participation in the plan. Frances almost fainted when she saw the soul full of hate before her again. Ingrid. Now she had a name. Revenge and extreme hatred were the feelings that moved her. She saw that her anger had taken her to the deepest hell, and that any trace of kindness and love had been consumed by the flames that melted her body. She would not rest, not until she had obtained her revenge. She wandered for years on end, from ship to ship, until she found the one. The medium ran to the engine room. She looked closely and realized that the boilers, despite having been replaced by powerful machinery that made the engine propellers turn, propelling that immense wooden and iron structure over the water, still existed. It was the same ship, more modern and renovated, but the same. She knew at that moment that no one would get out of there alive. She went up to the corridor of chained souls and walked to the ladder that would take her to the main cabin, where Forrester held the helm with one hand and his crucifix with the other, his eyes lost in the distant horizon. Ingrid. Does that name mean anything to you, Captain? The man did not turn around, just nodded and said, "I knew that one day I would be held accountable for my weakness. I should never have let that man do to Ingrid what he did. And me? I helped him. I put her still alive inside that furnace. How could I? There is no way to stop her. We need to get off this ship." "No, a captain never abandons his ship, Mrs. Francis. If it's me she wants, it's me she'll have." Having said this, Forrester ripped the crucifix from his neck, and Francis could see that next to the cross there was a small ballerina pendant, the same one that adorned the woman's neck. He took his gun and pointed it at the medium. "You know too much." As he pulled the trigger, Francis saw Ingrid approaching. The enraged and evil spirit grabbed Forrest by the neck and lifted him up. His body convulsed and blood stained his deep blue eyes red. He was thrown to the ground, and a thunderous noise was heard by all who were still alive inside that ship of horrors. The boilers, which had been inactive until then, lit up, setting fire to the entire engine room. Forrester's body was dragged down the stairs by the disfigured spirit. Another explosion occurred, this time more powerful, and the ship split in half. The fire did not go out, and Francis, before rushing into one of the lifeboats with 3 other people, the only ones who survived the chaos, saw Forrester's body melt like plastic, while he screamed in agony and Ingrid delighting in her retaliation from beyond the grave. The ship disappeared into the rough sea, which seemed to applaud the revenge of the beautiful woman who had once been burned alive without the right to defend herself and without the slightest mercy. Francis could do little because she knew that one of the most powerful forces is revenge, especially when it comes from someone who is no longer among the living. The last breath holds memories, and the spirit feeds on them. Ingrid's food was hatred. The few survivors were rescued. No one could explain what had happened, and Francis did not dare to tell what she had seen. That stretch of sea has become a cemetery, and Francis assures us that no ship that passes through there will be safe. After all, Forrester's last breath was not the best. And what about all those souls trapped on that vessel? Until Francis is called again to unravel the mysterious deaths on another ship, no one will be safe when embarking on a cruise where happiness awaits them in incredible and glamorous days. Or who knows? Because with each new sunset over the sea, in some forgotten spot in the Atlantic, you can still hear, between the wind and the waves, the sound of footsteps on the deck, the echo of an interrupted dance, and the whisper of a female voice repeating in fury, "No one escapes my vengeance."